Hello, I'm Chris. So my story actually started when I was a senior in college. I was a business major, not a traditional education, like I want to be a teacher, woo! But somehow I found myself, actually in November of my senior year, deciding on education. And so when I was talking to Rhonda a few weeks ago, when I found out I was going to give this talk, it kind of brought me back to my senior year, in which why I chose education and why I'll never leave education. When I decided on going into education, I talked to my favorite teacher of all time, which was a professor I had my sophomore year and then again my junior year. So I talked to him and was like, hey, I know you've been a great business professor and all of this, I'm going to be a teacher. So naturally his instinct was, why? Like, you chose a business major. Why don't you just go make a ton of money and so on and so forth. And my reasoning was because he was a huge influence on my life and I wanted to be that same influence. So then I chose an alternative route into education, and I was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed going in with my white thought, like, hey, I'm going to make a difference, I'm going to change the world, and fast forward into my first day in the classroom, and I was like, not a chance in the world. It was a hot mess. It was about as bad as any first-year teacher could ever experience. So it was just completely off the wall, and I had trouble classroom management. So it was just a complete wreck, needless to say. But as the weeks went on, I got slightly better, so just moderately awful, not extremely awful. And so I started talking to my students, getting to know them a little bit more, started to be a little bit more authentic with myself, and I met one particular student, and we'll call her Jada. So Jada, she had given me the most amount of trouble out of anyone in my class. And so I at one point did say, when I went home, I did not journal, but I said, I hate this girl. Like, I absolutely hate her. She was making my life a living hell. So needless to say, a few weeks later, I started to get to know her a little bit better, and we did home visits. So she was in my advisory, and we did home visits about midway through the semester. And so I went to her home, and I met her 6 sisters, 2 cousins, and her mom, who were raising them all. They lived in a 1-bedroom house, and that was the moment where I kind of just stopped myself in my tracks. I no longer was able to ever have the thought process of I hate a student or this student's making my life a living hell, mainly because I, with my white privilege, had never experienced what she was going through. She slept on the floor with her cousin, and then the rest of them obviously split between the bed, the couches, and the floor. So I got to meet her, Jada, I met her family, I met her mom, and so fast forward a few more weeks, we had developed a relationship at that point, and so she was one of my favorite students. We all had that favorite student that we know is going to make an impact in their life. And so with her being my favorite student, she came to tutoring every day. And so she was just like, I want to get ahead. I want to get better at math. Because she had struggled. She had trouble at the beginning of the year multiplying, dividing, and all that stuff. And I taught high school geometry, pre-calculus, and calculus. And so it was very difficult for me to experience that over the course of that year. That being said, she came to tutoring all the time. She got better. She improved. One of these days, her mom came to pick her up, and her mom was actually going to the Excel Center. She had never got her high school diploma, so she was going back to get her high school diploma. And she came in asking help on math. She knew I was Jada's math teacher, and so she also had trouble with her math, and so she came in, asked for some help. And so I helped her, and then the next day, Jada came in, her mom came to pick her up, and asked another question about math homework. Fast forward another 2 weeks. I started to realize that no longer was I tutoring Jada. I had become a tutor for Jada and Jada's mom. And so I was like, here I am, 23 years old, like, what am I doing? Woo! 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day was my schedule as a first-year teacher. And so like anyone who's taught here, your first-year teacher teaching is obviously very difficult. So needless to say, I was tutoring them for about 2 to 2.5 hours a day, every day after school, with emphasis on 3 days. So come November, I started doing it on a 4-day schedule in which I helped both of them. We actually planned this out to where I would either do it at the school or I would help them at their home. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful way for me to actually get into Jada's life and experience what she was experiencing. And so after helping them for a long period of time, May came around. So I was at a school that had been failing for quite some time and was struggling. Needless to say, we found out we were closing. So the school I was at my first year closed down at the end of my first year. That meant I was no longer going to get to help Jada and Jada's mom. They went to a different school, and I switched schools as well. So needless to say, I didn't help them as much. Fast forward again a year later to May of 2015. So that was when I started my second job at my second school teaching math. I get a call from Jada. She's like, hey, guess what? I went from not being able to multiply to divide to being able to graduate high school. I want you to be there. It's May 28th. You need to be there, please. So I was so giddy. I was like a second-year teacher. I got so much better. I was perfect at the job because, you know, once the first year goes by, we all think that we're like great. So naturally, I was crying, just like weeping on the floor, like, yeah, of course, no, like, duh, why not? But the best part of the story is I get another call an hour later. That call came from Jada's mom. So Jada's mom actually called and said, because of you, I passed my 2 math classes and now I'm going to graduate. Can you come to my graduation? And so getting those 2 calls within an hour of each other, that has made my life of teaching. As you can tell, I'm very nervous public speaking. I love classrooms full of students, not adults. So naturally, I get the call. They're both graduating on the same day, actually, within a few hours of each other. And so I attend their graduation, and it's amazing. We keep in contact. That was 5 years ago. I actually got a call, it was about a year and a half ago. It's Jada's mom. She has since graduated from college and is now going to be a teacher. And not only that, she's going to be a math teacher. So she gave me the greatest call I could ever have. And again, she is the reason I cannot leave education. The impact that we make on a daily basis, whether we see it or not, I never expected after my first day of school, when I honestly was just one thing better of people throwing around desks. Never thought that I would ever have my Freedom Rider story or my Stand and Deliver story. But needless to say, that year and a half ago when I got that call, she's now a math teacher actually in Chicago, Illinois, so they had since moved. So she's been a math teacher for a year and a half now, and she is absolutely rocking it. And so I would have to say that my story, while it's still continuing, is really about me wrestling with leaving the classroom. And so I'm currently not teaching, still wrestling with the idea as to whether or not I want to remain teaching, but I know that as I tell this story, part of me always will have a heart in the classroom, and so this is why I cannot leave education.